This is Quest for Tears, and in this video, I'm doing another tournament bracket, and I'm going to try to determine what I think the best video game console is of all time. It's going to be answered right now. All right, so yeah, here we go. I've got a bracket or a tournament bracket here of all, I don't know, video game consoles, I guess. I haven't even really skimmed over the whole list, so we'll see what happens. I don't know what's going to come out on top. I'm always a bit surprised at what I end up picking in these videos. So I just want to remind everybody to like and subscribe if you will. If you enjoy these videos, I would just ask, yeah, if you could subscribe, that would really help out this channel to grow, and share these videos too if you want to. I have the same, I feel like I should mention it at the top rather than at the back end of the video, but I have the same bracket that I'm doing in the description. If you want to do it along with me while I do it, feel free. Otherwise, do it yourself and let me know in the comments which console wins for you. But without further delay, let's get in and see this list or this bracket. So here we go. Right off the bat, we've got Super Nintendo and Sega Saturn. Boy, it's gonna have to be Super Nintendo, I think, passes through. I did a video just recently on the top 100 Super Nintendo games, but let me tell you, just before I pass Saturn into the nether realms, Saturn was a special system for me. It had some of my favorite games on it. Was it called Dragon? I always want to say Dragon Quest. I feel like that's wrong. That's not what it's that Dragon Force. Dragon Force. There's been no game made like Dragon Force. There was a few others. I can't even remember the names. I'd have to go back and look. But anyways, I don't want to make this a super long video, but I just wanted to honor Sega Saturn as I drop it away. It's an unfortunate matchup right off the bat with Super Nintendo, but I loved the Sega Saturn. So Super Nintendo gets a pass. Game Boy Color and classic Nintendo. I don't think I ever had a Game Boy Color. I was just trying to think about that recently. I think I went from a regular Game Boy into the Game Boy Advance. I think was my next iteration that I had purchased. I don't think I had a color, but it played the same games for the most part. I think I have to pass through the classic Nintendo, though. The system that started it all for me. That was the first console I ever owned, was the Super Nintendo. Or not Super Nintendo, the classic Nintendo. Here we have the PSP and the PS2. Well, obviously the PS2 is going to get the pass. I did really enjoy the PSP, though, for a time, but nowhere near the PS2. PS2 is still one of the highest selling consoles of all time, if not still the highest. I don't know if Switch beat it. I haven't checked those stats lately. Nintendo DS and the Wii. To be truthful, console or portable systems never held as much interest to me as regular consoles. The DS was a decent one, and I did have it. I didn't buy it at launch day or anything, but I did eventually own a DS, and I played it a bit, and I enjoyed it. But the Wii was, again, that was like Nintendo coming back into its own. They created something unique, and it was cultural and iconic, and I'm going to pass that through. They're going to end up pitting me against all Nintendo systems here. So we have the GameCube, and I'm not even sure what this is. I can't even tell by the pictures. It's like the TurboGrafx 16. I can't tell. I don't know what console this is. So obviously I'm going to pass the GameCube through. Again, what a Wonder Swan versus the Xbox. Well, I never played. I don't know what the Wonder Swan is. I think I might have a vague recollection of it, but I guess I'll pass Xbox 360. I never even owned one. I'm not a fan of Xbox, typically. They're not going to last very much. So here we got something else. I think this is actually Sega. I think I can see Sega up there. Is this Sega Master System or whatever, like the original Sega before the Sega Genesis or something like that? I don't think this even came out in America. And I don't know which Xbox this is. I guess I'll pass the Xbox through reluctantly. I think this is a Neo Geo, I think it says. I never got to play the Neo Geo. I always wanted to. They were so expensive. But Dreamcast, That's another fond one for me. Dreamcast is for sure going to get the pass. I'll talk more about it as we go through another round. So we got Super Nintendo and Classic Nintendo. Well, Nintendo, Classic Nintendo Entertainment System, that was the first console I had, and certainly holds nostalgic memories, but Super Nintendo was when I came into my own with gaming. I had so many Super Nintendo games, and I formed the kind of games that I enjoyed playing on the Super Nintendo. So Super Nintendo gets the pass. Boy, PS2 and the Wii. Honestly, I think I have to pass the PS2. I love the Wii, but the PS2 was another console that I just had a lot of games on. There's a lot of good ones for it. So we'll pass on the PS2. GameCube and Xbox 360, very easy choice. GameCube. I'm not a fan of the Xbox. Never really was. And again, easy choice. Dreamcast and Xbox, whatever this is. Original Xbox, maybe. I don't know if that's the new one. Xbox One. I don't even know. Dreamcast gets the pass. Super Nintendo and PS2. That's tough, but honestly, I think I have to pass Super Nintendo through. It holds more nostalgic memories than the PS2. I love the PS2, and there's a lot of great games on it. For some reason, though, it just doesn't hold the memories of the Super Nintendo to me, so I'm going to pass Super Nintendo. And here we go. We got GameCube and Dreamcast. So let's talk a little bit about these. Dreamcast and GameCube. So the Dreamcast was, I think, the one and only console that I ever imported from Japan before it came out in the United States. I felt so cool. I felt like I had this thing before everybody else did. Like a solid 6 months or up to a year. I can't even remember how long it was before it came out in America. And then I immediately bought it when it came out in America. Dreamcast was just another special system like the Sega Saturn. And it had a few unique games on it, things that I enjoyed. And then the GameCube. The GameCube, it's a Nintendo system. It wasn't as highly regarded, I don't think, as some of their other ones, but I enjoyed the GameCube still. But I'm actually going to pass the Dreamcast on. It had more nostalgia for me in that regard, but not as much as the Super Nintendo. So I have to pass Super Nintendo on. Now we move on to the other side of the bracket. We have a Game Gear, Sega Game Gear, and a PS4. Game Gear was fun, but PS4 was funner, more fun, if you want to say it. I think this is the original Xbox. I don't know. And then Vita. I had this. If this is the original Xbox, I briefly owned it. That was the only Xbox that I owned very briefly. And I was very disappointed in the games that came out on it, except for Chronicles of Riddick. That was one of the main reasons I bought it, because at the time it was exclusive to it, and I wanted to play that game. And then I also wanted to play Fable, and that game was a big letdown. It was so overhyped on what it was and the potential it could have been, and it failed in every regard to me. But I'm going to pick Vita, just if nothing else out of spite. A Sega CD and the Wii U. I'm assuming this isn't Sega Genesis. If this is what somebody picked, now I see Sega Genesis coming up. The Sega CD. I had a Sega CD. I loved it. It had some very unique games to it. I think I owned a Wii U, maybe briefly. I was not compelled to get a Wii U as much. I'm going to pick Sega CD. Much more fond memories. Nintendo 64 and Sega Genesis. I love Sega Genesis. It was fun. Not as fun as Super Nintendo to me, but N64, that has another story to it, and that is it was the first console that I saved up my own personal money for and got it on launch day, and all the other systems and things prior to that were all, gifts, like Christmas gifts or something like that, So N64, and it had a lot of great games on it on the N64. That's going to get a pass. I don't know what this is versus PS3. In television, I don't know. I don't know what that is. PS3 gets the pass. Lynx and whatever this is. Lynx, is it something like, this might be in television. I don't really know what either of these are. I'm just going to guess that this is some old tiny screen portable. I'm going to stick with I like consoles better, so I'll go with that, whatever it is. 3DS versus the original PlayStation. Now, the original PlayStation, it's going to get the pass. I'm just going to say about the original PlayStation. I loved it. I had so many games. It rivals the Super Nintendo for like how many games I owned. It's like Super Nintendo. original PlayStation, maybe PS2, I don't know, and N64. I had a lot of games for those. Yeah, maybe we'll talk about it more, but PlayStation, original PlayStation, Game Boy Advance, and original Atari. Like I said, I did have a Game Boy Advance, but I have some fond memories of the Atari was the first system I ever played. I never owned one, but I did play it. I'm going to pass Atari for nostalgic purposes. So we got PS4, PS Vita. PS4 is easy pick there. Pass that on. This list must have been made before PS5 and stuff, so that's not on here, but honestly, PS5 wouldn't make it far for me. Sega CD, N64. Again, I just want to give props and honor to the Sega CD. I enjoyed a lot of those games. It had those a lot of those full motion video games where it's recorded, actual video recorded stuff. Fun stuff on there. Fun stuff. But Nintendo 64 gets the pass for sure. I don't even know what this is. So PS3 for sure gets the pass. And again, between Atari and original PlayStation gets the pass. So now here we're getting to more interesting matchups. We're going to go PS4 versus N64. Of course, I played a lot of stuff on the PS4, and I played a lot of stuff on the N64. I'm going to allow nostalgia to play into this a bit, and I'm going to have to say N64 because while there were certainly great games on the PS4, I don't nothing hugely stands out where I have more memories of the N64 and just the uniqueness at the time. It was, I'm going to go N64. And then we have PS3 and original PlayStation. This is a surprise to me because I would think I would have gone with something newer, but I'm going old school here. And the original PlayStation had so many good games on it. I'm a big RPG fan, and the original PlayStation had so many RPGs, JRPGs, so many good ones. And I'm going to pass that through. I mean, it carried on through all the other iterations of the PlayStation. Certainly a lot more great RPGs came out. I had so many of the classic best RPGs were on the PlayStation. So let's pass that through. And now see, this is a tough matchup for me because of what I just said. The classic RPGs and everything that were on the PlayStation. I love the Nintendo 64, and it had some great games on it. I mean, we're talking GoldenEye and Perfect Dark. I mean, I had fun with obviously the Mario games and stuff, and Zelda. I mean, all the Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. I mean, there are massive hits on both of these. But because I tend to like those classic JRPGs the most, we're talking the Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9. We're talking Xenogears, probably one of my favorite RPGs of all time. So many more. I'm drawing a blank, but definitely classics, along with Resident Evil. The original Resident Evil was the reason I bought the PlayStation, was to play Resident Evil. And then, of course, you got Resident Evil 2 and 3. I'm going to have to pick the PlayStation. And then that leaves me with the very difficult decision of which one is the best. Is it Super Nintendo or the original PlayStation? Oh boy. Again, I just mentioned some of these great games that were on the original PlayStation. There is a lot. And between these two consoles, I don't know which one I owned the most games from. They were definitely of the top, I owned the most games on these consoles. The Super Nintendo had Zelda, Link to the Past. It had Final Fantasy 6 or 3 at the time when it was released, but it was Final Fantasy 6. That was the game that introduced me to role-playing games. And Breath of Fire, Uniracers. It's just a classic list of games. These two consoles, I don't even know. This is a coin toss to me. They both have some of my all-time favorite games on them. And this is the tough part. I mean, sometimes it's clear and obvious which one to pick, but this is very difficult. I don't know what to pick here. My heart and my gut tells me to pick Nintendo because, I mean, let's break it down this way. I've largely switched over to being a computer gamer. I don't have consoles anymore. I've gotten rid of all my consoles and everything except for the Nintendo Switch, which also wasn't on here. So this we were missing like the latest iteration of stuff. Nintendo Switch would also get really high on this list, but it would still probably come down to these two. And I think because of that, this is the console that really grew my gaming, who I am as a gamer. It was the system that molded me as a gamer. And I would say the PlayStation refined that and honed it in more for me. But I think I'll go with the original, like where it started, where I formed my love of gaming. And it started with the original Nintendo, but I really came into my own with the Super Nintendo in my gaming interests. So very close, but I'm gonna pick the Super Nintendo as my winner. Very, very close though, very close. And that's it. That's my tournament bracket for best console of all time. Again, we mentioned that PlayStation 5, maybe the latest Xbox, and Switch were not on this list. But I don't think Switch would have gone high. That would have gone far for me. I do love the Switch. But that's it. Super Nintendo. Did you take the test with me? If you didn't, you can go in the description and take the test yourself. Take the tournament yourself and figure out what you would put as your top console of all time. Let me know in the comments. How do you think mine turned out? Let me know which one is yours. What's your top console? That's it, though. That's it for this one. Make sure to like and subscribe. Again, as I said, it really helps grow the channel and get these videos out to more people, as well as sharing the videos if you feel so inspired to. But other than that, I will see you on the next Quest for Tears.